We recently have seen a podcast where Justin Baldoni shares a snapshot of where he was mentally and emotionally during this podcast. Now, I really want to break this down, although he probably couldn't openly say and discuss all the details that he'd been through. What he did do, though, was still be authentic in the struggles that he was facing from being in this scenario. So, we're going to break this down so we can gain a deeper understanding of what his experience would be and really the science behind what he's saying as well. Because a lot of people might have thought, he's just talking about his emotional pain, but it goes deeper than that. I also want to highlight something that maybe Blake Lively had missed. She might have completely underestimated his strength because of this one thing that he's doing, something we're going to explore further as well. So one of the things that we can see that Justin Baldoni is potentially grappling with is these false allegations and the dilemma of the vulnerability of it. Justin appears to be reflecting on the dilemma of being falsely accused, saying things like toxic masculinity can be weaponized or nothing good comes from pointing the finger at someone. These are some of the things that he said in the podcast. This highlights a crucial truth about emotional regulation. And he even talks about this in the podcast itself. He says that when we get attacked, there's two options that we have. We automatically can go into attacking or shut down or retreat. And that actually mirrors what happens to our nervous system. We automatically can go into fight, which is attack, flight, where we just want to run away, or shut down, which our nervous system goes into when we just feel like we give up and we can't do anything. But there's also another option. And he talked about that. He said, that's when we can opt for empathy, connection, compassion. And this is true. So there is an absolutely incredible person. He's like the Don or the king of trauma therapy. He talks about how the brain achieves this state. And what he's really trying to describe is that you want to get into a space where you're in the dorsal vagal system, where you're able to be able to connect socially. And it happens in the brain so that we stay engaged. But that can only happen when the brain feels safe. That's why if you've been in a toxic relationship, it's so hard to stay calm in these scenarios. You might look calm on the surface, but actually your nervous system is either shutting down or you're going into fight or flight, or you're feeling huge amounts of anxiety or fear, and that is normal. Justin also emphasizes that need for connection and that he has made sure that he hasn't isolated or become silo. I think he was using the word of silo. He emphasizes empathy and connection, but not everyone is capable of that. That is so important. Research shows that people that have toxic or narcissistic tendencies have difficulty in actually forming true empathy in the brain. They've actually looked at brain scans and looked at how narcissism affects people and whether they can make those connections to create empathy. And they can't. Their brain actually functions differently. So no amount of reasoning or reaching out or creating empathy with these type of people will make any difference. And you can see that Justin Baldoni is coming to terms with this when he talks about, regardless of the oppressor or oppressed, we need to acknowledge the hurt and where it exists or whom it exists in, something along those lines. And I think this is a profound realization for anyone who's been in a toxic relationship, because you will go through a phase where you keep giving, you keep showing love, you keep showing understanding, empathy to someone, and they simply can't or won't change. And there's nothing you can do about it because they don't have the ability to do that. And it's such a hard truth to accept that you have to get to a point where you have to see the person and see where the pain is and accept that it's in them, and you don't want to be taking that on board yourself. So you get to a point where you realize, okay, the issue isn't with me. It's within the person that's causing the harm. And I need to basically get away from them as quickly as possible. Justin also talks about sending a text to his team saying he's exhausted and he needs time to heal. This is crucial. You see, where there's emotional overwhelm, it leaves an imprint in a part of the brain called the amygdala. I call her Amy for short. If there's too much that Amy's carrying, she will keep triggering our nervous system either to feel overwhelmed, or there's another part of the brain that kicks in and you get numb. So you either feel like you're shut down, or you feel intense emotions, or you actually feel like numb, or like you're not really alive like you used to be. See, this is where, Dr. Van der Kolk's work is incredible. He talks about this rational part of the brain, which is dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Basically, that part of the brain, which is all about analyzing, you might go over things, you go over the story, you keep thinking about it, but it can't directly get to the emotional part of the brain. It can't get to Amy. There's no route for it to get to her. But there is another way. It's called the medial prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for self-awareness. Self-awareness can connect to the emotional part of the brain. It can connect to Amy. And this part of the brain allows us to feel and process the emotional overwhelm without analyzing it. And this is key. And he's basically trying to say we need to be able to express our vulnerability, express how we feel. And look, some people talked about it as if he needs to man up and I saw some videos along those lines. However, this has been his saving grace when it comes to dealing with a toxic individual. If you can't feel what's in or become self-aware, he would have probably not been able to have this fight where he's standing up for himself now, because Amy would have been carrying too much and you would have just gone into shutdown and give up mode. Justin also appears to be reflecting on how he's made some fear-based decisions and that there's been some people-pleasing that has led him to ignore red flags. And he was saying that now he aims to say yes to only those things that really, truly matter. And I think this is typical of people that are survivors. They often reflect on, why did I allow this to happen? As if you would allow something like that to happen. It's not that way. But sometimes people can feel that shame and guilt or embarrassment for being in that scenario when you're a really smart, intelligent, incredible person. The truth is, we have all been taught to ignore our gut instinct from a very young age. And healing involves learning to trust ourselves again, to really believe and trust in those gut instincts, because we have a gut brain, we have a heart brain, we have a head brain. So it's not just about focusing on what that analytical part of the brain says. It's actually being able to use the whole of our brains to actually make decisions. And it sounds like that's what he's reflecting on and saying, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to people please. I only want to do what actually is important to me moving forward. Now, reports suggest that Blake Lively wanted more control, creative control. And we can see that in Exhibit A from Justin Baldoni's team. She was trying to get more creative control over the project. And she may have perceived Justin's vulnerability and self-awareness as a weakness. But this is where she totally miscalculated what his actual strength is. Justin's ability to process his emotions is what has given him the power. He is able now to set boundaries and refuse any manipulation tactics. Because what happens is when we're carrying too much, and when Amy is carrying too much, like guilt or shame or public shaming, what happens is it's easier for toxic individuals to actually manipulate, because they use those emotions that we feel within us to shut down the critical thinking in our brain. So this is where he is absolutely brilliant. Is his ability to be self-aware that has been able to stand up and say, no, you are not going to defame my identity, my values. I am not having it anymore. See, toxic individuals often rely on controlling others through shame and guilt. That is the one way. And there's fear of having those emotions triggered that keeps us sometimes in the relationship or keeps us in a position where we don't speak up. But Justin's ability to connect or capacity to connect with his emotional pain has enabled him to heal the trauma as he's been going along. And that's prevented that tactic of her trying to accuse him of SH or other things from allowing her to continue to have power and control over him. And Justin also emphasizes that he never allows himself to be siloed, or I'm understanding that too. He really does believe in connection, and he has safe people to connect with. And again, this is also incredibly important for any type of trauma recovery. Brain science is showing when you form safe, supportive relationships, your brain then is able to release oxytocin, which is a connection hormone. And what that does, as soon as your oxytocin increases, it reduces the cortisol or stress hormone. And that helps you regulate your nervous system. Survivors often do lose the ability to connect, or they're afraid of connection, which can worsen their emotional state. And you just get smaller and smaller and smaller in your life. You try less and less things. And healing does require us rebuilding slowly in a safe way how to connect with people and be able to identify what are safe relationships. Justin also highlights the importance of challenging that inner critic. He says there's the part of you that doesn't feel valued, that needs love. The voice of self-criticism isn't the truth. In toxic relationships, survivors experience cycles. They've been through these massive cycles of love bombing, devaluation, discard. And discard is when you get punished for not doing what they want you to do. And to break free of this cycle, and because they take you through this cycle over and over again, to break free, you must be able to bring empathy and compassion to what Amy is carrying, those emotional pain, the emotional wounds. Without that ability, then you can't actually heal what she's carrying and let it go. It's through empathy, through compassion, through understanding that you're able to actually heal the brain and help it reset, if you like, to function in a healthy way. So when you process emotional pain through the self-regulation part, your brain releases oxytocin and you reduce cortisol and you regulate your nervous system and you feel like yourself again. You feel calm, you feel more and more like yourself, but it's a process that you've got to go through over a period of time where you're creating healthy habits again. Because when you've been in a toxic relationship, your brain has gone through, it's habitually going through situations where it's getting triggered over and over again because of Amy is being triggered. She's just got too much emotional pain that she's carrying. This is where what Justin is saying is in contrast to the behavior of toxic individuals. The problem that toxic individuals have is they have a lack of empathy. Remember I said they can't connect empathy in their brain. Now that means they can't have empathy towards themselves either. That's really the fundamental reason why they have toxic traits, they have narcissistic traits, is because narcissism is a protection mechanism from feeling the trauma that is in Amy. The difference is if you have empathy, you can heal that trauma. Whereas someone that has toxic tendencies, they don't have the empathy to heal and to bring that compassion and love and understanding to what Amy's carrying so she can let it go. Hence why they have to just keep blaming everybody else and pretending to be perfect and just keep blaming and shaming everybody else for not being good enough. because they can't deal with even their own pain in a way that has empathy and self-awareness. So they only have the ability to project their pain onto others and create the illusion that they are perfect. So that's why they're quite superficial. This inability to engage in deep emotional work is why authenticity is really powerful. And ultimately, it's so important to feel like you can just be yourself, so you can be free to be you. And part of that, to get to that point of having that freedom, having that space, having that peace, is being able to have that ability to be self-aware of what Amy or your emotions that you're carrying, and knowing that your strength is empathy, connection, understanding for yourself as well as others, and that you have a strength that toxic individuals can never take away from you. It is so powerful. It is so healing. And you don't have to express your emotions publicly like Justin Baldoni does, but you do need to learn how to process your own emotions for your own protection and your growth, because the reason why there's so much pain is you're not allowed to do that. When you're in a toxic relationship, you're not allowed to have emotions. You get punished for it. You're not allowed to be upset. You've got to be just numb or like a robot and not have any needs when you're with someone that's toxic. If you are looking to heal and you want to move forward, I do have an incredible program called Heal to Thrive. You can apply to find out more about it. See the link in the description. Remember, having compassion and love for yourself and understanding for yourself, especially when you have mistakes, is so important in your healing journey. I think there was so many great insights from what Justin Baldoni was talking about when we look at how the brain functions and how to heal from these type of scenarios. It appears that he is really on that journey. And what we can take from it is to be kind, to be loving, to be understanding towards ourselves. So sending you so much love. Till next time.